We're up to Daf Mem Tes, a few lines into the page. Ahu Machta. The last thing the Gemara had said was the Gemara discussed if you have a needle that was found in the liver. So it was a shaila in the Gemara of whether it's a treifa, meaning do we assume that the needle came from the stomach and it went through the walls of the stomach and went to the liver, in which case it's a treifa, or perhaps the animal swallowed it, meaning went through the nose, and it went through the lungs and somehow found its way to the liver, which is somehow connected. So it says the Gemara, Ahu machta d'shtakich b'sabuna rabba dekavda. There was a needle that was found in the liver, but not just in the liver, it was found in the largest ventricle, the largest vessel of the liver. So this is more of a likelihood that it went through the airway, because it's not like lodged somewhere in the liver. It's lodged in the part of the liver that's mamish connected to that part of the lungs. So, more of a reason to be megal. So says the Gemara, Huna mar breder of Idi tarif. Huna mar breder of Idi still said it's treif, because we assume that the needle went through the stomach, shot out from the stomach into the liver, and poked through, and that's a puncture. Rav Ada bar Minyumi machsher. He says, no, we could assume that it went through the trachea and eventually made its way through the liver without puncturing anything. So Asu Shailu Ravina, they asked Ravina the psak, and Ravina said, he was so confident that it was kosher, Amarlu, he said, Shakilu glima de terfai. You should take the coat of the Rav who said that it's treif, because by him saying it's treif, forced you to throw out the meat, he cost you a financial loss. You should take the coat as payment. That's how confident he was that it's kosher. So the Gemara says, Ahi kashisa d'ishtagich b'mara. There was a date pit that they found in the gallbladder. Now, so the concern always, apparently gallbladder is also connected to the lungs somehow, but here's the thing. The concern always is that it shot out from the stomach, it poked through the stomach, punctured the stomach, flew through and got to the other organs. The thing is that a date pit, as you know, it's not very sharp. It's more round. It's not sharp enough to puncture the walls of the intestines. So says the Gemara, Amar Ravashi, Kavina Berev Kana Amar, Havade Simpuna Nakavasi. This date pit definitely went through the lungs, meaning, even though, as we'll see, it's very tight through the lungs, and a date pit is large, it's still with the movement of the animal can push down with gravity. But the likelihood that it broke the walls of the intestines when it's not that sharp, as the Gemara is going to point out in a second, olive pits are pointy like a bullet. Date pits are rounder, they're not as sharp. It's unlikely that a date pit would crush through. It's not sharp enough, it's too blunt to be able to go through the walls of the intestine. Therefore mistama went through the airway. And says the Gemara, and even if, by the way, you would look at it, you'd be like, how did it get through there? And if you were to try to shoot it back up the airway, you wouldn't be able to. Mirva hudaravale. That's because when the movement of the animal, the gravity will push down the date pit through the airway. But meaning, and we don't assume that the date pit went through the stomach because it's not sharp enough. It says the Gemara hani mili dedikla, but this is only true with a date pit, which is more blunt and not as sharp. Aval dezesa, but an olive pits are pointy. Olive pits, if you find an olive pit in the gallbladder, you have to assume it broke through the walls of the intestines and found its way there, and therefore the animal's a treifa. Nichsav kaza. Okay. Rav Yechon said, Lama nikra reya. Why are the lungs called a reya? Reya is from a shorish of re'eh, to see. Why are the lungs in Hebrew called the same shorish as seeing? So it says the Gemara, Shemeira es heinayim, because the lungs illuminate the eyes. Now what does this mean? There's two explanations of what this can mean. One explanation can mean that if you eat lungs, it's good for your eyesight, meaning it's good for health. It illuminates the eye by eating the lungs. The other possibility is that you don't eat the lungs. Eating the lungs is not good for your eyesight, but apparently you could take the lungs, you could grind it up, and you could add it to some sort of spice and and it'll turn into herbs, medicinal herbs. Meaning, the question is are the medical properties that are good in lungs if you eat them outright or only when they're prepared in a medicinal herb? So it says the Gemara, so that's the question. We know that the lungs have good properties. That's called the reya. It helps you see. It helps your whole bottle, the vitality of your body. The only question is it good on its own, or is it only good if it's prepared in a medicinal herb? So says the Gemara, I'll prove it to you. Tashema Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Avza bezuza v'reya dida ba'arba. Rav Huna said that if an entire goose, can be purchased for $1, you should buy the goose lung for $4. Now let me ask you a question. Do a little economy 101. If what's beneficial about the lungs is eating it, then why should I pay $4 for the lungs of a goose when I can buy an entire goose for $1? Right? Rav Huna said that even if you go to the store and you can find a goose for $1, you should pay 4x for the lungs. Now, if the beneficial aspects of the lungs is eating it, then why should I pay 4x? Buy the goose itself, and the lung is included in the goose. It must be what's beneficial about the lungs is when it's prepared in a medicinal herb, and you need an expert to do this. So hence Rav Huna is saying, even if you could buy the entire goose for $1, but if you can buy that medicinal concoction for $4, it's kedai. So you see that the aspect of the qualities, the maila of a lung, is not when it's eaten on its own, but it must be when it's prepared by an expert for a medicinal herb, because if it's eaten on its own, it doesn't make sense to pay 4x for the lungs when you could just buy the entire goose for $1. Says the Gemara, V'yisal kadaitach la'achila linkut bezuza v'leichel. It must be through the herbs. And what the Gemara is saying is, the herbs, I don't know how to prepare the herbs, you have to buy it from an expert. So the point of the Gemara is, it's kedai to pay 4x for the herbs that have the lungs in it, even though it's 4x over the entire goose, that's kedai. Okay. Inkav reya hecha de mishamish yada de tivcha. Okay, so basically you have the lungs here, yeah, and the lungs have a puncture. Now that's no good, but the area that it's punctured is the area that the butcher handled. It's the area where the butcher pulled it out of the animal. So it's very possible that the puncture was due to his fingers. So the question is, do we presume that if there's a hole in the lungs in that area, we could rely on the fact that it was probably done by the butcher post-death and it's kosher? Do you say, no, a hole in the lungs, a hole in the lungs? I guess it's an area that he's pulling or touching. It's an area where the butcher's hands normally go and are a little more, Rashi says it's a little bit more aggressive. You have to pull it out. So it's an area that it makes sense that the hole was done by his hands. Or do you say, no, a hole is a hole? So it says the Gemara, Talinan, aloi Talinan. So Rav Ada bar Nasan Amar Talinan, Rav Ada bar Nasan says it's kosher because we assume that it was done by the butcher. Mar Zutra, brother of Maria, my loy Talinan. He says, no, it's treif. We don't rely on it, the fact that it was done by the butcher. The hilchas of Talinan, but the hilchas that it's kosher because we rely on the fact that it was mistama done by the butcher. Amr of Shmuel, brother of Avo. Abba Maresha Klei de Rafram Hava. My father was one of the heads of the Kala. The Kala was the Shabbos Hagadol drasha, the Shabbos Shuvah drasha. My father was in head of arranging the big Shabbos Hagadol Shabbos Shuvah drasha under Rafram. Okay, meaning that in that area, that time period, he was in charge. And the Gemara says, Amar, and he once said, Talinan, that if there's a hole by the area that the butcher's hands touch, we could assume the butcher's hand did it. Amru Kamei Lahada Mar Zutra brother of Mari, but they said that in front of Mari, V'loi Kibla, and he says, no, it's treif. Amra Misharshia, Kavase Davua Abba Mistabra. And he says, but it makes sense that we should be make a white to Talinan B'zev. I don't know if you remember this. We had this a while ago, that if a wolf runs away and there's holes by his teeth marks, we assume that his teeth did it. And we don't say that maybe there were holes before that his teeth happened to find. So what's the answer? Why? Because if it looks like a goose, it's probably a goose. Like the teeth, he bit it. It's some of this. It said, if we rely on the goose, on the wolf with the teeth marks, why can't I rely on the butcher? It happened to be holes, mamish, where the butcher's hands are, and he was schlepping, he's pulling out the lungs. Likelihood is similar. I know, maybe it's a little bit statistically less, but the point is, it's probabilities, it's enough. Murna, now this is the question that you were worried about. Yehuda was asking me about this. If you have worms in the lungs, right, and then the worms crawled out afterwards, here's the question. I have holes from the worms in the... Yeah, this is in the lungs. The question is, when did the worms make the hole? Did they make the hole after the animal died? And then it's not a treifa, or did they make the hole before the animal died? So it says the Gemara, Pligi bar of Yosef bar Dosever Rabbanon, Chadam Koidim Shchita Parish. One says, well, I don't know, so you have to be concerned that the hole was made before the shchita by these worms, and therefore it's treif. The Chad Amar Lachar Shchita Parish. And one says, no, it was only done afterwards. But Rashi says, why would it be done afterwards? Because why would a worm who's comfortable in the lungs leave the lungs? They're comfortable at home. They only leave it after the animal died. Because after the animal died, all of a sudden, like the engine in their home turned off. It's not as warm as it was. It's not as pleasant as it was. So they look for a new home. But while the animal's alive, why are they boring through the lung? And therefore, mistama, it was done post shchita. V'hilchasa la'achar shchita parish. Okay. What we're going to do is one more little few lines, and then the sugi of the day, but it's not hard. Very pleasant. Because why would the worms leave when the animal's alive? They're comfortable in the lungs and the animal's alive. It's when the animal dies, all of a sudden, the super turns off the heat in the apartment, they turn off the air conditioning, turn off. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Of course we eat it. What do you think those places are? The place that Yehuda tried to take me in the old city. What do you think they have? Says the Gemara, Rav Shimon Omer Achitinakiv. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba Techlifam Rav Yirm Bar Rabba Achitinakiv L'Simpin Gadol. We said that there's a hole in the lungs, it's a treifa, but Rav Shimon's shita is that it can't just be a hole in the lungs. It has to actually hit the bronchi, which are the veins in the lungs. And says the Gemara, it has to hit the biggest bronchi, the main ventricle of the lungs. Yosef Rav Acha Bar Abba Kamed Rav Huna. V'Yosef V'Kamar, Amar Rabbi Maluch, they quote Rabbi Maluch. V'Amar Rabbi Shulin Levi, in the name of Rabbi Shulin Levi, Halacha Rav Shimon, the halacha follows Rav Shimon, that not any puncture in the lungs is a treifa, dafka, if it's a puncture in the part of the lungs that's the main bronchi artery. Amar Lei, so that's where Maluch is quoting to be Mekel. Amar Lei, he said to him, Rav Huna said, Maluch Archa Kamet, are you quoting Maluch from Arabia? That Maluch. Ein halacha Rav Shimon Amar. He said the opposite. He said we don't pass like Rav Shimon. He said that any hole is a treifa. So there's different versions of what Rav Maloch said. Says the Gemara, similar story. Kisalak Rav Zeir, when Rav Zeir went to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, Eshchel Rav Bibi Yosef V'Kamar. He found Rav Bibi and Amar, and he said Rabbi Maloch Amar, Rav Shimon Levi halacha Rav Shimon. He quoted Rav Maloch as saying that halacha follows Rav Shimon, that it's only a treifa if it punctures the main bronchial artery. Amar le Chayed Amar. He said, I swear, we once visited Rav Maloch, and we asked him, apparently this is the only time, I heard this Mashiach said, it's the only time in Shas that this Rav Maloch is quoted. So everyone's trying to figure out, it's the only statement from Shas, they're trying to figure out what did he say. So he said, we once visited him, and we said, did you say the halacha follows Rav Shimon, or not like Rav Shimon? I know it's interesting. Everyone's like off a tumult of what Rav Shimon said. So he said, Amar Lon, ain't halacha Rav Shimon Amar. He says, no, I said we don't pass him like Rav Shimon. Va'at ma b'yadecha. And after then Rav Bibi asked Rav Zeira, and what do you have to say in the matter? Forget about Rav Maloch. What's your psak? Amar le, hachi Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ami, Rav Shulin Levi, halacha Rav Shimon. I say we pass it like Rav Shimon, but the Gemara concludes, ain't halacha Rav Shimon. We don't pass it like Rav Shimon. Okay. If you don't pass it like Rav Shimon, that means any puncture is treif. If you pass like Rav Shimon, only if you puncture the main bronchi. Now, new sugya, and this is going to take us to the end of the daf, very, very pleasant. Says the Gemara like this. Okay, there's a stomach in the cow called the keva. Okay? The keva is the stomach. Anyone who's been doing any topics related to smicha, keva is the stomach that has the properties to make cheese. So, apparently, on the keva there's fat. I watched a video last night from the butcher. The butcher. By the way, for the record, it's Gavaldik. On the start of every page, it has his phone number, so you can call him to order meat. I love the OU Torah, this is his name, and it has his cell phone number. I love it. Anyway, so he showed what is chaylev. Now, chaylev is referencing fats that are forbidden by kares. But the truth is, chaylev is fat. The cow is full of fat. Certain fats are forbidden, chayav kares. Certain fats are not forbidden. Certain fats are universally accepted, this is a problem. Certain fats are universally accepted, they're okay. One of the areas of the machlokes, as we're going to see right now, is the fat that's sitting on the keva. On that stomach, there's a layer of fat. Is that chaylev, that's forbidden, or is that permissible fat you can make it steak in? That's the shayla. So says the Gemara, Rav Yitzchak bar Nachmeni, Rav Oishia, chaylev shala keva. The chaylev that's on the keva, on that stomach, kohanim nogu by heter. The kehanim eat it. By the way, Rashi says it's not just kehanim; it's mutter. The reason why I say kehanim is because by the shlomim that was given to the kehanim, so they would actually eat it. But the point is, it is permissible fat. Who said it's permissible? Rav Yishmael she'omer mishum avosav. It was Rav Yishmael quoting his ancestors. So the fat on top of the keva is permissible fat, as said by Rav Yishmael b'shem avosav. So Rav Yishmael paskins it's permissible. Says the Gemara, and how do I remember it's Rav Yishmael? Very simple. Yishmael was a Yishmael Kohen Gadol, right? Yishmael was a Kohen. Yishmael kahana. Yishmael was a kohen. Mesayeh kahane. And he gives psukim that are beneficial for kehanim. In other words, the way to remember it, this helps kehanim because they could eat the fat in the Beis Hamikdash. He's a kohen, looking out for his people. But not just that, Rashi says the lashon is Mesayeh implies he always does this. So not just in this area is he looking out for the kehanim, he's always looking out for the kehanim. In what areas of halacha is Rabbi Shmuel looking out for kehanim other than this case? So says the Gemara, Maihi, what's the other reference that there's a pattern of Rabbi Shmuel being super chill with kehanim and super beneficial to kehanim, besides for whether they could eat the keva's fat? So says the Gemara, Tanya. Let me say it outside. There's basically a machlekes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva when the pasuk says that the kehanim give the bracha to Klal Yisrael, Kol Yisavarchus Bnei Yisrael, and Malem Yivrech Hashem Shrecha v'chule. They're definitely giving a bracha to the Yisraelim. There's a shaila in Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. Is there any source in the Torah that during Birchas Kehanim they themselves get blessed? Rabbi Shmuel says yes. So you see, he's looking out for Kehanim. Because not only do the Kehanim give a bracha to the Yisraelim, they get blessed by Hashem. Rabbi Kiva disagrees. Rabbi Kiva says no. What happens is, they bless the Yisraelim, and then Hashem blesses the Yisraelim through them, but there's no makar that the Kehanim himself get blessed. It doesn't make sense that they're not going to receive a bracha. So says Rabbi Kiva, Avarechecha mivarcha. What was the lashon? Vavarcha mivarchecha. The Rebbe, he always say, or he also uses in English, those that blessed will be blessed. Meaning their whole source. So Rabbi Kiva agrees that the Kehanim get brachas, but not from the Birchas Kehanim. They just get the generic, when you bless Jews, you yourself get a blessing as well. The point is, Rabbi Shmuel is looking out for Kehanim because he himself is a Kohen. He's saying the Kehanim also get Birchas Kehanim. Says the Gemara, the Tanya, Kol Yisavarchus Bnei Yisrael. It's blessing Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Shmuel says, Lamanu bracha Yisrael b'Kehanim. I know that the bracha goes from the Kehanim to the Yisraelim. LeKehanim asalei Lamanu. Where do I know the Kehanim also receive a bracha of Birchas Kehanim that the bracha goes on them as well? Kishoimer va'ani avarachem. Va'ani avarachem. A Birchas Kehanim means as Hashem says, I'll bless you. You bless Klal Yisrael, I'll bless you. So Kehanim are included in the process of receiving the bracha of Birchas Kehanim. Kishoyim and Nivarchem have oimer Kehanim mivarchem Yisrael. Hakadosh Baruch Hu mivarch leKehanim. The Kehanim bless Klal Yisrael, and Hashem blesses the Kehanim. So it really starts as Hashem blesses the Kehanim, and it goes from the Kehanim to Klal Yisrael. Good. That's Rabbi Shmuel looking out for the Kehanim. Rabbi Kiva disagrees. Rabbi Kiva says no. Lamanu bracha Yisrael pi Kehanim. Bigvura loy lamanu kushem v'invarchim have omer Kehanim mivarchim Yisrael kadosh baruch hu maskem al yodem. Says Rabbi Kiva, no, there's no makar that the Kehanim get the bracha. The Kehanim bless Klal Yisrael, and then Hashem gives a bracha to Klal Yisrael. Hashem sort of signs off on it. So there's no makar in the pasuk that the Kehanim are included in the bracha. So says the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Elu Rav Akiva bracha leKehanim enali." According to Rav Akiva, the Kehanim don't get anything from this process of Birchas Kehanim. They don't get any bracha. Says the Gemara, they get the generic. If you bless others, you yourself will be blessed. But that's not just by Birchas Kehanim. That's a father blessing his kid on Friday night. You understand? So the point is, Rav Akiva is not looking out for Rabbi Shmuel in the same way for Kehanim, the way Rabbi Shmuel is. The Gemara points it out. Umay Mesayeh Kehane. Wait a minute, but according to Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel, they both agree that Kehanim get the bracha. Rabbi Shmuel feels that it's from Vani Avarachem. Rabbi Kiva feels it's the generic Vavarchem Avarchecha. So why is Rabbi Shmuel looking after Kehanim more? The answer is Demuk leBirchas Kehanim b'Makom bracha Yisrael. The difference is that Rabbi Shmuel believes that they get the same bracha that Klal Yisrael get. They're included in Birchas Kehanim, which is a higher madrega than the generic. Those who bless shall be blessed. Okay. We started this discussion, and this is going to take us almost to the end of the daf. The Rabbi Shmuel believes that the fat on top of the keva is permissible. Says the Gemara, what's the source for this? Rabbi Shmuel, Sha'amim Rishamav Yisamaihi, Titania. Okay, one quick thing to remember. How to know which fat is forbidden to us is basically which fat was burnt on the Mizbeach. Whatever fat was burnt on the Mizbeach, you can't eat. If it's not burnt on the Mizbeach, you could eat. It says, Es kol ha'chela v'asher al-keref. All the fats that are on the digestive tracts, the innards, that is burnt on the Mizbeach, and that's forbidden. Go to the next page. Lahavi chelev shaladakin. Says Rabbi Shmuel, you know what's included? V'es ha'chelev. Included are the fats of the innards, is the fat that's on top of the intestines. Notice, what's omitted is the fat on the keva is not included. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, what's included in chelev, the iser chelev, because it's burnt on the Mizbeach, is the fat of the innards and the fat of the intestines, but the fat of the keva is not included. Could eat it. Correct. That's the Rabbi Shmuel that we're referencing. Comes Rav Akiva, and Rav Akiva says, no, lavi chaylev shal hakeva. No, the chaylev on the keva is forbidden. So it's a clear machloikes, Rav Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Here's the issue. Let me say this outside and we'll see it inside. Here's the issue. Okay, so if you watch this video, it's actually very interesting. So to identify chaylev practically, forget about the drushes, but just to practically identify it, because the pasuk says that the Torah identifies certain chaylev as forbidden. One of the ways to identify it is certain qualities. One quality is it peels. You literally can take the fat and pull and rip it like paper. That's one quality, which the fat on top of the keva does have. So that would be a sign that it's forbidden. But there's a second quality, and that is it's draped over like a sheet. It's actually very interesting. It's literally like a balloon. He could pull, and he pulls the chaylev and he covers the kidneys, and then he takes it off. Mamish like a coat. If you need that second quality also as an identifier, the keva is not included. So here's just the way to remember it. Rabbi Shmuel said, keva permitted. Rabbi Akiva said, keva forbidden. The problem is I'm going to have a brisa that says the exact opposite. Rabbi Shmuel says aser, and Rabbi Akiva says mutter. So says the Gemara, or mini, I have a contradiction. What's the identifying factors of chaylev that's forbidden? Rabbi Shmuel oimer, ma chaylev hamachasas hakerev krum v'niklaf, avkol krum v'niklaf. It has to be any fat that you could rip, like paper, like mamsh tear. You know what's included? That's forbidden. You know what's included in that? The fat on the keva. It's forbidden. So we have a stira. The first brisa Rabbi Shmuel said it's mutter, and now Rabbi Shmuel saying it's aser. Now he never says it outright, but he says any fat that can be ripped and peeled is forbidden, and included in that is the keva. So we have a straight up contradiction in Rabbi Shmuel. Comes Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says no. Machel v'machasas hakerev toisiv krum v'niklaf. I was last night like 1 in the morning. I'm watching the video. Toisiv krum v'niklaf, and he's just reading the Gemara. So he says, and he shows. He's so comfortable just covering things with fat. Yeah. So he says like this, so the identifying factor, says Rav Akiva, is not just that it can be peeled, it has to be able to be draped over, which the fat on the keva does not drape. So according to Rav Akiva, the fat on the keva is permitted. So the first version, so we have a straight up contradiction. The first brisa, Rabbi Shmuel said mutter, Rav Akiva said also. The second version was the exact opposite. So says the Gemara, so how do you reconcile this? It says the Gemara, I'll tell you what you do. Flip it. Flip the first brisa, meaning keep it consistent. Rabbi Shmuel says osir, Rabbi Akiva says mutter. That's the second brisa. We're going to go with the second brisa, change the first brisa. Says the Gemara, Shalach Rav Mishneh Rav Yochanan Kachi Atzoshel Mishav Eibach Kamaisa. Now, why would I switch the first one and not the second one? Machos Eibach Kamaisa Eibach Pasraisa Shaniacha Kivin Tiktani Ma Daifka. The lashon of the second brisa seems a little more accurate because it goes through the identifying factors of the keva and therefore of the fat, and that seems to be a more accurate brisa. One quick problem, by the way. So the problem is, we started this whole thing by saying that the Rav who was Mekel was Rabbi Shmuel, and the way to remember is because he's looking out for his Kahanim, but now we've come to the point where we've actually switched it. The Rabbi Shmuel says Aser. So now it's no longer, it doesn't work. So says the Gemara, notice, I never said Rabbi Shmuel's Mekel, I said Rabbi Shmuel Mishum Avoisav. Rabbi Shmuel himself is actually Machmer. His fathers are the Mekel one. He himself Taka Aser. So we keep it. Rabbi Shmuel says aser. I thought the way to remember is Rabbi Shmuel was a kohen. Rabbi Shmuel mishum avoisav is lenient. V'leiloi sfirle. So says the Gemara, El ihachi k'Rabbi Shmuel k'Rabbi Akiva hi. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak shamar mishum avoisav v'leiloi sfirle. Okay, just from here into the end of the daf, very, very simple. We've been talking in the past that if you have a hole, but it's naturally sealed by, let's say, intestines, or we talked about the liver and the gallbladder. So here's one factor, actually, again, the way I told you about the chaylev that it drapes over and it's able to peel, it's not very tight. It's not fat that's super tight. So says the Gemara, Amirav chaylev tahar. If it's permissible fat, i.e. like fat of a steak, then soisim, it's able to seal up a hole. Meaning, if you have a hole by fat, will the fat naturally serve a sealant that is not a treifa? The answer is it depends. If it's chaylev that's forbidden, it won't seal it. Why? Because it peels. It moves. It's not very tight. Kosher fat, non-chaylev, seals. That's the way to remember. Rav Sheshes says, no, all fat seals. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't care. If there's a hole by the fat will seal it up. It's not a treifa. it looks. I'll show you a video when we're done. I'll show you a video. It's very interesting. I don't know. Fat's fat. Whatever. Actually, you know what it looks like? It looks more like a thick skin membrane, to be honest with you, than fat. It doesn't look like fat of a steak. It looks like you can peel it. So he's saying that that's not going to be soisim. Now the Gemara has a kasha. What about the chaylev of a chaya, a deer? Does deer chaylev seal the puncture? Do we say that what a qualifying factor is how tight it is, or whether it's kosher or not? Because you said before, chaylev that's forbidden doesn't seal. Well, technically, chaylev achayev is permissible. The Gemara rejects it instantly. Who cares about permissibility or not? It's metzias, it's practical. Does it seal it up or not? Chaylev fats do not seal it up, whether they're permissible by a chaya or not. Says the Gemara, chaylev chayim mai. Dafka amar chaylev tar soisim v'hainami taru oidilma mishum de medak v'haloi medak. Rabbi, amaiti boilach. Nihid sharba achila adut lemedak. Rabbi says, what do I care whether it's permissible to eat? Is it tight? No. Chaylev by its nature is not tight, so it's not going to seal it. 2 mices, and this will take us to the end of the daf. Chaylev of a chaya is not going to be sealing it. It has nothing to do with whether chaylev is permissible or not. That type of fat is not tight. And therefore, even though in a chaya, technically, chaylev is permissible, it makes no difference. Correct. Hahu nekev distimta chaylev tame. There was a certain puncture that was by chaylev, and they brought in front of Rava. Amar Rava, again, we had before, it was a mashayla of Rav Sheshes, it was machlekes Rav Sheshes and Rav. Again, just to review, you have a hole by chaylev, it's a machlekes Rav Sheshes and Rav, whether it's kosher. This shayla came up, they sent it to Rava. You know what Rava said? Lamai nichashlo. Why should I be machmer? Chada, first of all, first of all, you have Rav Sheshes to rely on. And now you're going to ask me, wait a minute, but even though you have Rav Sheshes to rely on, what about Rav? Then Rav said there's a second factor. The Torah doesn't want us to throw away money. Making me throw out a cow is expensive. So I have Rav Sheshes to rely on. It's a shayla that's related to expense. I'm going to be lenient. That's Rava's thoughts process. Rav Papa says to Rava, Ravi Isur Deraisa, V'atamar Tatarich Haman Yisrael. What do I care about money for? This is an Isur Deraisa, it's Safik Deraisa L'chumra. So you're worried about the money of Klal Yisrael. That's not a factor when you deal with Deraisas. When you deal with Deraisas, and this is a Shaila of Trefus, it's a Shaila of Deraisa, therefore you have to be strict. So originally Rava wanted to be Mekel based on a financial component, and to that, the Gemara Papa responded, when you deal with Safik Deraisas, you got to be strict.
What are we talking?
This is the puncture where the chaylev was sealing it up. And the question is whether it's a proper seal. Now the Gemara says this conversation of wanting to be lenient based on financial factors with a response also repeated itself regarding liquids. Remember we've had this many times that there were certain liquids you can't leave out because we're afraid that a snake drank from it. So the Gemara says, Minyumin kindunka iglele besika deduvsha. Minyuma, the pottery dealer, had honey that he left uncovered. So the question is, do snakes drink honey? Do snakes drink honey? So the Gemara says, Asla Kamid Rava, they asked Rava, do I have to spill out all the honey out of concern that a snake drank from it? Amar Rava, Rava says, I think it should be mekel. Why? First of all, I have a Mishnah that said, Shloisha mashkem asur mishum gilui. There's only 3 types of liquids that snakes drink. Yayin, wine, mayim, water, chalav, milk. Honey, they don't drink. Vishar kol mashkem mutarim. So first of all, I have a Mishnah that says they don't drink honey. And secondarily, secondarily, the Torah cares about Klal Yisrael's money. I don't think it's kedai for me to throw out money. Similarly, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to Rava, you're worried about financial components of throwing out the honey? Let's say your taka wrong. Let's say the snake drank from it. You know what happens? Someone dies. When you're dealing with life and death, I don't care about money. He says, Rav Shimon, first of all, you said the Mishnah holds that snakes don't drink honey. Rav Shimon disagrees. Rav Shimon says, no, snakes will drink honey. So first of all. And secondarily, you said, oh yeah, it's also financial. Who cares about financial? If there's a chance that a snake drank from it, you guys going to die. It's a sakant nefashis. It's sakanas nefashis. Va'at amrit hatayr chasam b'nei Yisrael. So you have over here, he told him to be macher. And we'll just end with this, 2 more minutes, just to finish up. They had a machlokes tanoim whether snakes drink honey. The first version of the Mishnah is that snakes only drink wine, water, and milk. Rav Shimon says they also drink honey. Says the Gemara, where's Rav Shimon? Rav Shimon Mahi. Where's Rav Shimon's Shita? The Tanya, the Brisa says, Chamisha ein behem mishum giloy. There are 5 liquids, ein behem mishum giloy, that snakes will not drink. What are the 5 liquids that snakes will not drink? Tzir, fish brine, chometz, vinegar, shemen, oil, dvash, honey, umerius. And murius is a type of fish oil. So honey is included in the liquids that a snake will not drink. Rav Shimon Oimer, af yesh mishum giloy. Rav Shimon says, no, they'll drink all of these liquids. All 5, the tzir, and the shemen, and the dvash, they'll drink. Vam Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon says, Ani re'isi nachash shashasat tzir b'tziron. I once saw a snake drink fish brine. So they do it. You know what the Gemara responded? Because the Tanoim said they don't drink fish brine. Rav Shimon says, I saw a snake drink fish brine. So he says, that was a stupid snake. Meaning normally snakes don't drink fish brine. That one did? That's a stupid snake. That snake's an idiot. We don't bring rayas from idiots. That's a shaita. Now just to finish up, Amar Le, Rava said to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, so Rava had a case where there was honey left over. It's a machlekes tanoim whether they're able to. Rav Shimon says they do drink honey, so therefore it's a problem. Amar Le, Rava said to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Oy dilemias b'tzir. But I will say this, I'll be machmer by honey that maybe snakes drink it, but fish brine you should be lenient. Why? Why should you be lenient by fish brine? Because I'll tell you why. Whenever they when the Rabbanan would leave anything uncovered, and there was a concern that a snake drank it, they would pour that liquid into the fish brine because the fish brine kills the venom. So that's what they would pour the stuff into the fish brine. So fish brine itself is kavachaymer okay. So that's what Rava said to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, you should be making by fish brine. To that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak responded, Amalei oid lemias b'dvash. Fine, but then you have to be machmer by honey. That honey is a problem. To Rav Shimon Elazar kai kavase, because Rav Shimon Elazar also holds honey is a problem. To Tanya b'chein Rav Shimon Elazar oiseh b'dvash. So therefore, I'll be makel with brine, but you got to be machmer with honey. I will stop here.